Testing, testing.
That's right.
I'm making it.
It's Terry, right?
Teddy.
Teddy. And is this my water or your water?
Teddy, it's yours.
This one's mine.
Got it. Okay, so you're third on this. All right, we're going to start the program. How's everyone doing tonight? All right. My name is Justin Milrad, and I am the president and co-founder of the Blue Dove Foundation. And on behalf of the Blue Dove Foundation, JFNCS HAMSA, the Atlanta Abilities Alliance, Jeff's Place, and all of Atlanta, we want to thank you for coming out tonight. So what is quieting the silence? It doesn't really make any sense, does it? So quieting the silence is a platform, and it's actually a pun on words. And basically, when we started the Blue Dove Foundation, from the research we did, we found in the Jewish community that there's some real challenges, a lot of shame and stigma around the topic of mental health and substance abuse. So the pun on words is really, let's stop with the quiet and let's start having conversations. And I can proudly say, since 2018, Atlanta is basically one of the most advanced Jewish communities where people are comfortable in many ways talking about mental health and substance abuse. So as a community, I urge everyone here to please help quiet the silence and please have conversations and get engaged, get educated, and learn as much as you can so that we can be a very supportive community to one another. So at the Quieting the Silence programs, typically what we do is we have speakers tell their stories. And the wonderful thing about this, and what we've heard from people who've attended, is once you hear stories, it makes people feel normal. It really normalizes the things that we struggle with on a daily basis. So I see someone up here telling a story, a brave person talking about their struggles and how they overcame many things, and I can relate to them. So I'll talk about our first Quieting the Silence. 250 people showed up, which was incredible. The program went from 6:30 till 9 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, the building asked us to please leave because the real magic happens after the program when people talk. So tonight we have three amazing speakers. It's also, I want to recognize that February is Jewish Disabilities Month. So many of the topics are going to be around Jewish disabilities and abilities. And we have three speakers who are going to tell their stories, and we just encourage everyone to take what you hear and learn tonight and continue to build community, break down the walls, eradicate shame and stigma, and let's do everything we can to overcome mental health and substance abuse. And, y'all don't know much about me, but my background over the last 7 years is I worked in a treatment facility. And the secret sauce, in my personal opinion, is community. It's being there for one another and being vulnerable and sharing your stories. So thank you for coming tonight. I'm going to pass it to my partner, Joel, from JF&CS AMSA, who is going to deliver a Devar Torah for us.
Thank you, Justin. I know this is a sanctuary, but you are allowed to clap. It's totally fine. Helps to know the rabbi and where she keeps her stender. So, thank you everyone for coming tonight, and welcome to Quieting the Silence here at Congregation Or Hadash. I'm Joel Dworkin, Program Manager for HAMSA, helping Atlantans manage substance abuse at JF&CS Atlanta. My wife, Rabbi Lauren Henderson, was double booked tonight, meeting with congregants and watching our 1-year-old. So I'm going to be sharing a word of Torah with y'all tonight. And that word is svara. Svara is a 2,000-ish year-old concept I learned from Rabbi B'nai Lappi, who founded a Talmud yeshiva of the same name dedicated to queer learning. Should anyone be interested in the concept of queer Talmud or how we went from sacrificing rams to Yankee Doodle Adon Olam in about 2,000 years, I would highly recommend you look up her crash talk. It'll blow your mind. Rabbi B'nai Lappi teaches that Torah comes in tiers. Mitzvot derabanan, the teachings of our rabbis, our acquired customs, various legal scholarly texts that we have, which is superseded by mitzvot deoraita, which comes from the Torah and Talmud as we know it. All of this is superseded by svara. So what exactly is svara? Svara is your moral intuition as informed by Torah. It's the feeling in your gut which tells you something isn't right or I need to do something about this. It is the hidden meaning within every dissenting opinion in the Talmud. It is the wisdom that each person draws upon when they look at a box and decide to step outside of it for an answer rather than reinforcing the sides. I want to take that concept of svara and use it to look at a famous line from Pirkei Avot. Make yourself a teacher, acquire yourself a friend, and judge others generously. And I'm going to admit now this is a somewhat simplified translation of that, for which Rabbi B'nai Lappi would be a little upset with me, but she has to judge me generously. On its surface, it seems pretty straightforward. Find a trusted teacher, learn with them, build a relationship, and goodness will come from it. Maybe the Rav and the Chaver, the teacher and the friend, are two different people. And they teach us to judge generously. Both are potential options. So I usually start with this part, but today we started with the Torah because I do run a substance use disorder program. But I've been in long-term recovery from heroin addiction for almost 16 years. I also have ADHD, which is often expressed by my inability to find anything I cannot physically see in front of me, needing to stand up and wander around after about 30 minutes of doing absolutely anything, or the fact that I wrote this Devar Torah at about 3:30 this afternoon in order to have it here in time for you. And why it's going to take a hard left turn in the middle twice. In receiving the grant for this program, I had a conversation with Amy Murphy of the Jewish Abilities Alliance. Amy, I did not know you were going to be here tonight. I thought you weren't available, so please raise your hand and wave. Thank you so much, Amy, for all of the work that you do. I asked her how to showcase the experience of people with disabilities in a way that wasn't tokenistic, because Justin and I are not people with visible disabilities. And in that conversation, she said to me that not all disabilities are visible, and this really struck a chord. I tend to make light of a lot of the symptoms of ADHD, and I don't think of it as seriously impacting my life. but it explains a lot of other things that have really shaped who I am. Why I could never do homework even though I understood subjects really well. Why I tried to fix a dopamine deficiency with pretty much any substance I could get my hands on. Why it took me 12 years to finish an undergraduate degree. And why I didn't hold on to a full-time job for more than a few months at a time from 20 until 30. It also explains a lot of my personality, why I enjoy things like climbing and whitewater kayaking, why immersive experiences are the most captivating to me, and why I love deep diving into a concept and getting into the real nitty-gritty of it and then teaching it to other people. And so it is with our teacher and our friend. One person can be both teacher and friend. Either of them can be separate people, and they can change places over time. New friends and teachers can come and go, some for a short period and some for a lifetime. You can have multiple teachers and multiple friends at once, if you're open to the possibility that anyone could be a teacher or a friend. And with this turn, I think of this now as the core Torah of ADHD, constant wisdom through shifting focus. Tonight, we are joined by three people I am privileged to call teachers and friends. Their stories are Torah, animated through Svara, their moral intuitions, and I am honored to introduce them to you. Our first speaker tonight is Joe Alterman, who is an arts leader, scholar, journalist, and world-renowned jazz pianist. He is the executive director of Naranana, an Atlanta-based concert and culture series which celebrates Jewish contributions to music and the arts. As a pianist, he is hailed by the greats. Ramsey Lewis described his music as happy music with tasty meat on the bones. Les McCann states, Joe's on a blow-your-mind level. And Dick Cavett referred to Alterman as one fine first-class entertainer. As a journalist, Alterman has written liner notes to 3 Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra with Wynton Marsalis albums. Legendary journalist Nat Hentoff called one of Alterman's columns on jazz one of the very best pieces on the essence of jazz, the spirit of jazz, that I have ever read, and I'm not exaggerating. Joe Alterman, everyone.
How are y'all doing? I'm used to performing, and that's how I open all my performances, but I see we're at a synagogue. I'm not used to being on the bima. I don't think I've been up here since my bar mitzvah, but it's good to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share my story tonight. I want to apologize. Typically, I'm the guy having a lot more fun out in a cocktail hour, but truthfully, I had to come in here last 30 minutes and just sit, because it's hard for me to get in the mindset to share my most heavy experience with y'all. So with that, you mentioned you had your speech at 3:00 today. I hate to tell y'all, y'all are listening to a jazz musician speak. We're writing this together right now. I'm just kidding, but we got this. But basically, I'm here to talk about my experience with obsessive compulsive disorder. And it feels weird to start my story like this on a bima. But I grew up here in Atlanta, around the corner, went to Epstein, and I think the first thing about Judaism that really stuck with me was how many traditions we have. And for a long time, I would develop these things that I didn't know what OCD was. I'd never heard of the term OCD, but I just thought they were more Jewish traditions. So I remember when I was a little, well, I guess I'll start like this. Everyone has a little OC. Just not everyone has the disorder part. It's not until your life becomes totally disrupted that it's the disorder. But, when I was a kid, my dad would come in and tuck me in every night, and I'd always make him line the door up with a thing in my room. And then over the years, that would become more of a tradition of more things that I would ask him to do when he put me to bed at night. And then I started, and at that time, this was, I'm 35 now, this was like when I was 4 to 10 or something like that. I never heard of the word OCD. My parents had never heard of the word OCD at that time. There wasn't a lot of information about it. well, I was about to say on the internet, but I don't even know if there was the internet really. But anyway, eventually these things started, these traditions became more and more and more and more. And I remember, I'll never forget, I was a big jogger growing up, and I was on a jog one night, and I was actually at the corner of Mount Vernon and whatever, the corner where Holy Innocents is. And I was standing at that corner, and I remember I took a step, and it didn't feel right. And I can't explain what the feeling is, but it didn't feel right. So I stood and I kept trying to nudge my feet on that corner until it felt right so I could move on. And 3 hours later, I came home. I finally left, and I came home, and I was just totally freaked out, and I had this terrible stomach ache. And I remember telling my mom, and I took a Pepto-Bismol, and I took this and this, and eventually none of those worked. So my mom thought, maybe this is anxiety you're dealing with, and it was. And so over time, more and more and more things kept happening. But again, I never heard of the word OCD. Eventually, I started counting, and that was like the hardest one for me. I would get stuck on a number and have to count it over and over. So, but it'd be really difficult because, say my number was 80, I'd be taking a test, and it would say count to 80 3 times. And then something would happen, and I'd lose my count. So then I need to count to 80 6 times. And then I'd lose my count then, and it'd be 89 times. And then by then the test was over, and I was struggling with ways to figure out what was happening to me and to explain it. And again, I never heard of OCD. So I'm sitting on the bus. At this point I was going to Woodward, and the bus ride was about, 45 minutes. And I remember I would just look at everyone on the bus like, is everyone else counting too? I just thought maybe it was a thing everyone does and no one talks about it. And eventually I realized that not everyone was counting also. And most of my day was spent doing these obsessions and compulsions, except for the time when I get on the piano. But basically one night I remember going up on American Online. I went on the website, AOL, and I typed in everything that was happening, and the term OCD came up. And immediately I knew that's what was going on. And I remember I think I was in 6th grade, and I remember bursting out crying. I ran down to my parents. I told them I got this thing, and they'd never heard of it, even though they both probably have it. And they were luckily. It took my dad a little while to understand it. He was never. They've always been supportive, but my mom, I think, right when I said it, understood that this is something she's been dealing with too. And my dad, not as much. So it was more. It took him a little longer to understand it. But I started going to doctors and all this stuff. And I was on a lot, they put me on a lot of medicines immediately, and none of them worked. I remember the weirdest side effect I got was my eyes dilated for an entire month. That was bizarre. But as I was trying to go through this treatment, which eventually led me to cognitive behavior therapy, I didn't want to tell any of my friends what I was dealing with at school because I enjoyed feeling normal around them. And looking back on it now, normal is totally overrated, totally. But at the time I didn't know that. And so I'd basically be going through my entire day, faking being normal around my friends and doing these obsessions and compulsions that totally took over every aspect of my day. But I'd come home and run up to the piano. It kind of was like the thing where I could always just let it out. And I grew up taking classical piano and always getting in trouble for changing notes. So I wasn't really playing any repertoire. I was more just playing how I felt. So I'd just play these, if I was in a bad mood, I'd go to G minor. And if I was in a good mood, I'd go to D major, and just improvise in those keys for hours and hours. And to me, that's when the piano became like my best friend, like the place where I can always be myself. And so I always tell anyone who's dealing with OCD to find an outlet to express your frustrations and your feelings because it's super important. But once I finally figured out I was dealing with OCD, this was a time when OCD was portrayed very negatively in the media. I remember there was that TV show, not Hook, you know what I'm talking about, Monk, that made me feel like OCD was something you just laugh at. And then the movie about Howard Hughes came out, The Aviator, that made me feel like OCD is something I'm gonna go crazy with. And then Oprah used to have this girl on her show all the time who really just looked good. She was really cute. And I think that they must have thought that people can relate to this person because she's a cute looking person. But her story was so depressing. It was basically, I understand I'm never going to get better and I'm okay with that. And so at that point, I just thought that OCD was, something I was very unfortunate to have and to be laughed at and to be, poked fun at, and you're never going to get better. But eventually, thanks to not these medicines having terrible side effects, eventually I found a behavior therapist. And that kind of changed my life. And basically, she got to know my routine very well, and then she'd come over to my house and mess with it. To me, OCD, I started to see OCD as, it's kind of like you're dealing with a fear of heights. You just got to keep going to the top of that building until you're not afraid of it anymore. And that's really what she did. There's a lot of things you hear in OCD treatment that take some time to really sink in. I had a few of those. But when I look back on OCD now, I think the most important things I heard was that OCD is not you. It's an experience that you're going through. And I remember hearing this over and over again. It wasn't until that hit me that it really is a life changer. The other thing for me was, and this might sound bizarre if you can't relate to OCD, but I started to see OCD, this was very helpful as I was going through behavior therapy, to see it, again, not as me, but kind of like a living being inside of me. And my goal was to kill that guy. I know you're not supposed to say that on a BEMA, but that's what I was trying to do. And the only way you can kill that guy is to not feed that guy. So every time I would not do something that OCD would tell me to do, OCD got just a little bit smaller. It got to the point for me that I had to relearn how to walk, because every step I took forward, I would actually have to take like 4 steps back and then 2 steps. It was a whole thing. And eventually it became like instinct. So I really had to figure that out. I was sent home from Camp Barney because I was stuck in the woods trying to do my walking thing, and it was a really hot day, and they found me totally dehydrated in the woods. It was a very intense experience to go through. But luckily, going through all that behavior therapy gave me a lot of skills that helped me in my life. And at the time I was so frustrated that medicine wouldn't help me. But now I still have OCD, but I'm stronger than my OCD. So when something comes up, I just say, shut up. And it's little in me now. It's still there, but I've basically killed that guy. And I'm really honestly happy to have gone through that experience. It's, whenever I play music, when I play a gig, I'm lucky that a lot of times people tell me they think I sound like an old man or something, which in jazz is a great compliment. But I don't think that my music would emit that feeling if I had not been through this experience. I also think, when I was in high school, I remember there were so many days when I'd be hiding in some hall because I was freaked out about something, and I would always hear, someone say something like, I'm so OCD, I would always hear it saying so casually. I remember one time I was taking a test, and basically I couldn't write. Eventually I had to take all my tests orally because it was so complicated writing the letters so perfect. So when the P would come around, if it went over the line, then I had to rewrite it, 80 times or so. So it was impossible to even get through a word during a test. But I remember I had some kind of panic attack, ran outside of a class and overheard the cool girls at school saying, they're at the water fountain. And one girl had a few more sips than her friend. And she said, I'm so sorry, I'm so OCD. And I almost lost it on her, but I did not. But it occurred to me, at that time, I felt like I was the only person kind of going through something. And then, I got out of high school and I started dating a little bit, and I realized on everyone's third date, everyone basically tells their stuff, and everyone has some stuff. So it kind of made me feel grateful for that experience at a young age. Basically every night I would get in bed, and after I did my 4 hours bedtime routine, and occasionally my dog would come in after I did the 4-hour routine, and the dog would come in, and OCD would tell me, if you don't get up and pet your dog, you don't love your dog. So I'd get up and do that, and it'd take another 4 hours to get in bed. But once I finally would get in bed, I would put on the music of a few of my favorite artists, and one of them is a saxophone player named Sonny Rollins. He's like a jazz icon, legend. And when I was a senior in high school and starting to get better, I wrote him a letter, and I said, I'd been through something, and I was really thankful for his music because it was like the only time I got freedom in my day. And this is the only thing I wrote down for this. But his letter back to me was, is my motto today. It's like my Torah, truthfully. This is in my wallet. It's hanging up in every room of my house. He said, "Dear Joe, your comments were appreciated. We all have to use adversity as an opportunity to find a way. So keep a strong mind throughout this short existence. Your examples give us all hope, as all of us here in this life have to struggle." And that kind of changed my whole life, getting that message. It's really my motto. And I feel that OCD was, for me, a great opportunity to strengthen my mind. Nothing can be as hard as that. So I'm here to tell you that I mean, there's no eloquent way to say this, but I got very into it with the national OCD whatever, because I was annoyed that the girl that Oprah was giving this platform was getting that platform, because there are a lot of people who, me included, I didn't know that you could get better. And I was very angry with them for giving them that platform. And now I'm more speaking out, but it's important to me to come out and be the opposite of that girl and the opposite of what you see on the news and everything about OCD. There is a way to get better. There are times when it will get harder, but I'm not up here to say I'm sick forever and I'm okay with that. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I've gotten there. So I'm here for y'all, and I don't know, I could go like for a lot more time. I got some jokes, but no, any question? Is this a question time or? Okay, well, that's it. But thank y'all for listening.
Sarah Lynn Guillory has worked as...
Guillory?
Guillory. Well, we're done. Thank you. And thank you so much to Teddy for being our ASL interpreter for the night. A good friend and phenomenal at his work. Sarah Lynn Guillory has worked as a sign language interpreter for 17 years for the community, including medical and religious settings, the CDC, and the United Nations. She worked for 2 years as the American Red Cross National Coordinator for Accessible Services and Technology. She currently works for the Social Security Administration as a Social Security insurance specialist. She has participated in and given lectures on disability, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging with the nonprofit Braver Angels. She has been a parent advocate and has recently started as a visually impaired caller for para rock climbing. Sarah Lynn Guillory. Love you, Sarah.
Transition music. It's okay to take meds. All right. So my name is Sarah Lynn Guillory, and my journey has been messy, and I expect it to continue in its beautifully chaotic course. I have a locket that I wear with a pearl inside, just to remind me that in every pile of poo that I have in my life, there is a way to find a pearl of positivity. And there are really 3 parts to my story: the poop, the progress, and the pearls that I've found. So my experiences are personal and from my perspective only. Please know that when I share only from my perspective. I am disability adjacent in some cases, and I do not speak for those people. I only know how their disabilities affect me. The poop, the things that have affected my mental health. I have lived with crippling anxiety and perfectionism my whole life. I am also a functioning introvert. This is fun. I experienced a failed adoption of another child when I was 12 years old as the sibling, and he is now living out a life sentence for a double homicide. Also an interesting experience. I'm going to touch on a lot of things, so I apologize if you get whiplash really fast. I quit college in 2001 because I couldn't decide what I wanted to be. I did eventually get my master's degree in management and leadership, but way later. The honeymoon of my first marriage began with abuse, and it lasted until I became pregnant with my second son and left. I went to counseling about the marriage and was told that the abuse and unfaithfulness was my fault. And it wasn't until after my divorce, when I attended a divorce care group, that I was able to be open and honest about what had happened. I have had several custody battles with my ex-husband's mother. They were financially and emotionally exhausting. In 2006, I tried to reconnect with my high school sweetheart and ended up being raped. That is something that will affect people. My mother has ADHD and borderline personality disorder. She thinks in absolutes and creates alternate histories. As an adult, she has medicated on and off for the ADHD, but never accepted the other diagnosis. She is currently in denial about a cognitive decline that she's experiencing. And so I experienced that as her child. My father has struggled with major depressive disorder his whole life, going on and off medications. He had a traumatic brain injury in 2005, and I was there. It was gross. He and my mother divorced in 2009, and within a year, they both remarried. And this is only pertinent because it's kind of funny. My mother married an end times pastor, moved to a farm in an attempt to be self-sufficient, and they are awaiting the second coming of Jesus in 2036, in case you want to know. My father married a prisoner convicted of fraud who was released another year after they were married. She was addicted to cocaine and fentanyl until the day she passed away in 2021. My father has lived with me on and off since 2016 because of his debilitating depression and its intersectionality with his brain injury. He has lived with me full-time since 2021, and I have been his power of attorney financially and medically since 2017. He did have a suicide attempt in 2018. He has given me permission to share his story, way too much of his story. I said I don't have that much time, but thank you so much for your permission. My husband and I, this is my husband, have experienced 2 failed adoptions. One was because Russia closed its doors to all American adoptions at the time that we were trying to adopt a little boy. We had his picture, we had chosen his name, and there was just no option of getting him at that time. There was another 6-year-old who we fostered for a year, and the adoption process had started, and the courts decided to return him to his previous adoptive parent. I work as a sign language interpreter some of the time when I'm not at Social Security, and I've learned to cope with vicarious trauma. Physically, I had the first of 2 cervical spine fusions in 2016 from degenerative disc disease. I contracted COVID in November of 2020, and I have lived with long COVID ever since. It is a debilitating list of symptoms that has altered how I function in my everyday life and why I am a wheelchair user. That's the poop. Whew. Okay, the progress. I started my journey about being open and honest about mental health when I was in middle school. I told a youth pastor that I wasn't happy at home, and he told my mother, who then scolded me and grounded me for sharing anything negative about our family outside of my own mind. I was forbidden to share anything. I wrote a poem about depression, suppression, and suicidal ideation in metaphor that was published in my high school newspaper, and no one recognized it for the cry for help it was. I have always since then been a champion of accessibility, from the playground of my elementary school to the national headquarters of the American Red Cross. I got so involved in being a caregiver and an advocate, I sent myself right over the top of functioning in a healthy way and spotlighted the ways in which my anxiety in my body overruled my mental strategies that I had built up. And I had a cornucopia of strategies. I was raised by a teacher and a clinical family psychologist. And I raised a child with autism and bipolar, and a child with musculoskeletal degeneration and severe chronic pain. And I married an occupational therapist, which is his second degree. So I engaged talk therapists in different times throughout my journey. I've learned applied behavior analysis, cognitive behavioral therapy, which was mentioned earlier, and fatigue management. So I have strategies for days. I've been taking medication on and off for my anxiety, hence the music, since 2017 after a conversation with an older couple who invited my husband and I over to their home after learning that our son had bipolar. And they opened up about their own son, who is an adult with bipolar and lived with them on and off. They shared that it helped when they started taking anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication, and it was the first time that I had thought, wait, I can admit that I struggle when I'm trying to take care of someone who struggles. It was a game changer for me, and not the first time that people have opened up to me about their struggles because I was just open and matter-of-fact about mine. The pearls, it's hidden in here, I promise. But the pearls, things that I've learned, there are 5. 1, it's okay to talk about suicide. So I'll go first. So when I got the call that my dad had been taken to Grady Memorial Hospital, he had overdosed on muscle relaxants, and I grabbed my power of attorney paperwork, and it included a do not resuscitate, do not intubate order. Talk to me afterwards if you want to know more about how those actually work in real life. It is different than what you think. I was sitting in the hallway in the emergency department watching my dad slowly, peacefully drift into non-existence, and a doctor walked by and glanced over at my dad, and glanced at his crash monitor, and started walking away, came back, glanced over again, called over to the nurses' station and said, hey, whose patient is this? And everyone said, I don't know, nobody cares. It was really busy. And I go, why? Well, he's not doing what the kids these days call the breathing. So he woke up from a coma 5 days later with a scratchy voice from the intubation saying, I am Darth Vader, to everyone, which was great. I called all his friends and made him say it. Number 2, it's okay to talk about diagnoses and medication. Taking medication for your mental health is not a show of weakness. It is an indication of incredible strength and resilience. Being open about my son's autism and bipolar diagnoses connected me to others who have struggled with being caregivers. I'm open about my own diagnoses to help people know me better and to make others feel more comfortable around me and just be their true selves. Third pearl, it is okay to struggle with an acquired disability. Take your time to reevaluate how you should be in this life journey. It's not static. You are not static. The way you cope one day might not be the same way you cope another day. Fun fact. Okay, there are research studies now relating to PTSD with parents of those with rare diseases. Just over 12% of them meet the criteria for PTSD. For parents of autistic children, it's 18.6%. And it's more likely in parents whose kids display challenging behaviors like physical aggression and self-harm. I am quoting a research study from Australia. And so if you're a caregiver, you might already have an acquired disability and not yet be totally aware of it, and that's okay. The 4th pearl is it's okay to have kids who are not okay. For a long time, I didn't think that my oldest son would be able to be independent. He went to full-time programs that taught cognitive behavioral therapy. My youngest went to a full-time pain rehabilitation program at Boston Children's Hospital. They are both still on their journeys of self-acceptance and self-care, and I am proud of them, and I love the great things about them. And my 5th pearl is it's okay to not be okay. And I had a conversation earlier. I told you I was going to say okay like 15 times in my speech, but it's okay not to be okay. You don't have to be okay to make a positive change in the world. Tikkun Olam, healing our world, making it a better place, is not only for the mentally stable and the able-bodied. So I will not be silent. Will you? Thank you.
Jason Wheatley is Georgia-born and raised, originally from Alpharetta. Growing up around horses his entire life, Jason has a unique passion for animals. The love of speed and mechanics led to his first career as an automotive technician, the purchase of his beloved Mustang Mach-1, and an ultimate awareness that he loved cars but wanted a different long-term path. Admirably, Jason began college at the age of 32. In 2014, Jason met his wife Jill at the Locken Music Festival, and they married in January 2016. In 2017, Jason and Jill had identical twins, born 3 months early, and the girls attended their daddy's graduation from Georgia Gwinnett College, where Jason earned a degree in business administration. After college, Jason took his first accounting job at VersaGuard and ultimately transitioned to Focus Brands, where he is thriving and rising through the ranks. Good job. Now holding the position of senior restaurant accountant, Jason and Jill share Jason's son, Mason, who is 14 and lives in Virginia. He shares his father's love of cars and sports. All of us love Daisy, their lab mix, whose job it is to keep everyone on the straight and narrow.
I don't actually need this because, oh, okay. All right. It'll catch it, but. So yeah, my name's Jason Wheatley. I'm 44 years old. My parents, Brenda and Richard, moved down here from, my mom from Parma, Ohio, my dad from Poughkeepsie, New York, because they both had a passion for horses. I don't know, I'm from here, so like, I know all about, I remember when Alfred had one traffic light. But Alfred is horse country. So I have a fraternal twin brother. His name is Jamie. We are nothing alike. We did not get along. We get along a little bit better now. I grew up boarding and training quarter horses. My parents were horse trainers. I lived on the farm during the summers. Gained my work ethic and my love of animals from my parents. I peripherally participated in United Methodist religion as a child. We were not heavily involved in the church, physically or spiritually. That's who I am. What am I? I'm an addict in long-term recovery. And I say that with confidence. My childhood was a competition for attention, both positive and negative. I was a good student. I liked school. Academically, I was talented. I didn't apply myself. I participated in a program called TAG, it's an acronym for Talented and Gifted. And I enjoyed that program. I was shy and awkward at times. I was most comfortable and still am most comfortable in small groups and around a small handful of friends. By the time I was 14, I was generally unhappy. I felt alone in a crowd. I felt alone at home. I started experimenting with illicit drugs, specifically marijuana, cocaine, and LSD at that age, and I was arrested the first time when I was 15. At age 18, my brother dropped out of high school and left. The day after I graduated from high school, my mom divorced my father, packed up while we were out of town, and was gone when we got home. In September of 1997, our family horse farm caught on fire and burned to the ground, and none of the horses survived. At that time, it was the largest loss of livestock in state history. I was forced to move out on my own. My father, who, bless his heart, did what he could, but he lost everything and just wasn't capable or able to continue to have a place for us to stay. That really kind of concreted this feeling of abandonment that I struggled with for a long time after that. I started spiraling out of control, and I was desperately searching for my place in life. My drug use increased exponentially. I was using drugs at a level that I couldn't even explain. And I attribute that to, I had lost my way. I didn't have any direction. I didn't have anybody. I was self-dependent, and anybody who knows anything about recovery knows that when left to our own devices, that's the worst place for us. We are our worst company. I was arrested too many times to even count. My last arrest and my last drug use came on April 19th, 2010. My clean date is April 20th, 2010. I was offered drug court in Forsyth County, and I gratefully accepted. I completed the program in 2012. And I say, anytime I'm asked to speak or tell my story, I give drug court credit. Drug court got me clean, but my recovery program keeps me clean. My anonymous groups, I come here to the meeting here. I have multiple meetings that I attend on a regular basis. I have a Jewish neshama. I was not born to a Jewish family. I had a kosher conversion on January 12th, 2017, 5 days before Jill and I were married. I took the name Nachshon Hillel ben Avraham. And here's why. 7 days after the Jews left Egypt, the Israelites found themselves between an angry Egyptian army and a sea. And Nachshon from the tribe of Judah jumped into the Sea of Reeds and led his people to safety. Said the Rebbe, the lesson for us all the lesson for us all is that we must stay focused on our life's mission, disregarding all obstacles. The name Nachshon has been synonymous with courage and the will to do the right thing. Hillel, my second name, was a sage and a great teacher. He was known best for his tolerance, his wisdom, and his empathy, and coined the saying, "Do not judge your friend until you have stood in his place." The other thing that Hillel, the sage, was famous for was a non-Jew came to Shammai, which was Hillel's colleague and another great learned teacher of his time, and asked to be taught Torah standing on one leg. And Shammai said, "I can't do it." And Hillel said, "I will do it." Hillel said to the non-Jew, he said, "That which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow." That is the entire Torah. And the rest is commentary. Now go and study. He was eulogized in his passing as a quote-unquote pious, humble, and righteous man, and I aspire to follow in those footsteps. My recovery life. I met my wife, Jill, who's here tonight, at a music festival, as Joel said, in 2014 in Arrington, Virginia. I was following the Allman Brothers, String Cheese, the Revivalists, Tom Petty, and Widespread Panic, and she went to see Bob Weir and Rat Dog. We dated long distance. She lived in New York City. I lived here in Georgia for a year, and we were legally married in New Jersey on January 3rd, 2016, and then our kosher wedding was days after my kosher conversion. Jill got pregnant immediately, as do following the rules of Judaism often lead to. We have identical twin girls. They were born at 28 weeks and 4 days. Netanya Ma'ayan and Sarah Chaya Bas Yahavet Eden. Netanya outgrew her prematurity. She is neurotypical. Sarah struggled with her physical, and she was diagnosed with a rare pulmonary condition that required frequent and often lengthy medical interventions. At 15 months old, Sarah was in a cardiac intensive care unit where she had a watershed stroke. And for those of you who don't know what a watershed stroke is, the loss of blood and internal bleed causes the loss of blood to the brain, and it's from all four quadrants. So that's why they call it a watershed stroke. As a result of her stroke, she is non-ambulatory, she has epilepsy, along with a host of other neurological challenges. How does this apply? Anonymous programs are spiritual, not religious programs, and they say that often. Although, there are a few prayers that are involved in all of the anonymous programs, and one of them is called the Serenity Prayer. The Serenity Prayer goes like this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Aha, the things I cannot change. I can't change what happened to Sarah. I cannot change the trajectory of her life. I cannot change my past. I cannot change other people. The courage to change the things I can. I change how I parent Sarah. She's not fragile. I oftentimes get gasps from my wife because of the things that I do with her around the house, fly her around and flip her around. She's quite the daredevil. We have this thing she likes to do, it's called Bat Sarah. I hold her upside down by her waist, and she does her arms like this, and she laughs and giggles and says, Bat Sarah, Bat Sarah, Bat Sarah. At night, after dinner, I race her in her wheelchair. We do drag races down all the way down through the house to the bathroom, and she laughs the entire time. I can change my perspective. I have a choice to see her for her inabilities, or I have a choice to see her for the person that she is, and I choose to see her for the person that she is. She makes me laugh. She loves to laugh. She has an amazing sense of humor. And her smile shines so brightly, it brings a smile to my face. I can change my life's mission. When I first graduated from college, the only thing I could think about was getting a job and making money. And now, the only reason I want to make money is to be able to support my family. One of the things that came out of an argument, actually one of our early years of marriage, and one of the things that's kind of mine and Jill's mantra is that we only care about what happens between the front door and the back door. And I literally ran from the front of the house, slapping the door, to the back of the house, slapping the door, and screaming that this is all that matters, what happens between the front door and the back door. And the wisdom to know the difference. Psychology Today states, wisdom involves an integration of knowledge, experience, deep understanding, and a tolerance of the uncertainties of life. The way I live my life, I choose, is constantly learning to discern where my control ends and Hashem's begins. It's that simple for me. What did it take? What was the straw that broke the camel's back for me? To go from the depths of substance abuse, drug abuse, jails, institutions, and ultimately death. I can't say that it was I can't say it was, I can't specifically say what it was, but this is what I do know. I have an average pain threshold for physical pain. I'm not a wuss. I whine. But my emotional and my spiritual pain threshold is high. It took me 15 years of death and despair to find my way out of the darkness. In the NA Big Book, it says, quote, "When the pain of staying the same gets greater than the pain of change, you will surely let go." And that is absolutely true. I put my recovery first in this speech for one reason. Because everything I have today is because of recovery. And we are told in the meetings by those who came before us that anything we put ahead of our recovery, we will surely lose. Thank you.
Well, I would like to invite our speakers back up here, and this is the point where we're going to open it up to questions from the rest of the group. So if you'll take the mics that are up there, and we can start running around here. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask our speakers today? Anyone?
First of all, thank you for those very powerful speeches and sharing your story and your journey. Are there any daily rituals that you follow to kind of keep you in a good place, to kind of motivate you and set a very positive state so that you have a great day?
I just meditate in the morning, that's all. Oh, I'll speak up. Oh, thank you. I just meditate in the morning, that's all.
Same. No, I also, I wake up and very specifically say thank you, God, for my ability to breathe. That is a constant struggle with long COVID. That is how I start my day. It is amazing how thanking God for breathing really changes your perspective on the rest of your day. So I just live in an attitude of gratitude, not as a quotation from a book, but as a lifestyle.
I am not a morning person at all. My wife, she wakes up and she's like, boing, oh, okay, good morning. Our girls are split, but I charge Jill with getting Tani because she's me, and I get Sarah because she's her. And that gets, I don't meditate as much as I should. I don't read the daily literature every day like I should. But Sarah has a way of making me realize that my life is amazing, and that my life is amazing because of her. So she's my morning.
I just want to thank you for sharing your stories, and you too, Joel. And you mentioned about talking about, reducing stigma. And I think something that you spoke about, Joel, is so important is the understanding about something that people think, oh, everybody has a little ADHD and things like that. How, I was talking to this, Joe, Joe, because you mentioned that at the start. Right. No, oh, sorry. I was talking about the ADHD you spoke about, and Joe talked about the OCD. But just in your opening about the disability and the talking about things and bringing it up, it's people say, everybody has a little OCD and different things like that. Oh, so sorry. I didn't mean that. Yeah, the girls. Okay, but what I'm trying to say, I'm not doing a very good job here, is that sharing and talking about it, it really does destigmatize things, and people come here and think of different things and how it really helps leave here with a better understanding of everybody and everything we go through in life. So I just want to say thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you guys for sharing. Curious for each of you, obviously you each have had your own, yeah, it's better. You each have had your own unique and personal journeys, and I'm sure there were a lot of different people who impacted you at different times. So I was just curious if each of you wanted to maybe reflect on someone who now, still means something to you, or, left you feeling a certain way or gave you a certain bit of wisdom or comfort at any point on your path.
Yes, every teacher in high school who understood what I was going through. I had teachers that failed me, who thought I was just screwing around. The teachers who really would spend extra time with me, the teachers who would dictate the test to me when I couldn't write, and the teachers who knew that I loved the piano and would, arrange a class so I could do that. Just everyone who got it was, and I'm in touch with them still, because the ones who didn't get it made my life much harder than it needed to be.
Okay, I'm going to tell a story that 3 people in this room already know. And it's kind of silly because my main answer to your question is nope. Nope. Stuff is just so different in my life. Bipolar is not talked about, especially with children. And I raised one, and he was violent. And he still is, to an extent. He's better. And he's living independently outside of my home. He is 21. In case you want to know the ages of my kids, they're 21 and 18. The answer is not really. Anyone who's been kind, it has made an impact. And when I go to Publix, I will go up to the counter at the deli that's about this tall, and every time I order, they will give me an extra piece of chicken, which I just say, oh, thank you so much. That's so nice. Bye. Why do I get extra chicken? I don't know, but it happens. So if you ever need an extra piece of chicken, go out with me.
It's a great question. Thank you for bringing it. When I first started going to Narcotics Anonymous, it was in a little trailer behind a church. And I was terrified. I went for months, and everybody kept saying, hey, we have these suggestions, 90 meetings in 90 days, work the steps, get a sponsor. I went to meetings, every time there was a meeting there, I went. I was willing to work the steps, but I was not willing to ask somebody to be a sponsor. I was not at a place where I was ready to ask for help. And one of the gentlemen in that meeting could see that. And he said, hey, you need a sponsor, right? And I was like, yeah, I kind of do. He's like, I'm going to be your sponsor. It's not typically how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to, but he could see that I wanted it, but I had been alone in my life and been taught as a child that asking for help is a sign of weakness. And he worked the steps with me all the way through, all 12 steps. It's a very personal, it's a very intimate thing to do that. And I learned many, many things from him. But the one thing that he told me that it ties very closely with a lot of the things that I said in my story is that when it comes to dealings with others, our responsibility is to keep our side of the street clean. And that's very much in line with understanding where our power stops. And I mean, it applies to people in society. It applies to Hashem. It applies to our relationship with Hashem. And we have only so much control. And our responsibility in life and our duty is to keep our side of the street clean and do the right thing that we have control over. And he taught me that, and that's something that I will never forget.
Thank you guys so much for your bravery to share your stories. I'm wondering, like, with the rigorous honesty of the 12 steps, like how much of your history is appropriate to share with your kids so that they could either avoid the same path or not emulate. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like when is it too much to tell your kids? Like how much should you share? I don't know if you know the answers. I'm just curious.
I think that's a personal decision. I certainly have people in the meetings that I've been to that bring their kids with them. Not because their kids may have the affliction, but because they want them to know where they came from and that they've done all this work, that they didn't roll out of bed looking like that, right? That it took a lot of work and a lot of self-reflection to get to be the person that they are. For me personally, my son, who's 14, lives in Virginia. I'm still trying to figure out if he kind of shows the signs. Certainly, he's mine, and certainly his mother is very much so, though not treated. He's been to me. He comes a couple times a year. He's been to meetings with me. With the girls, I think they've been when they were little, but I think we're still trying to navigate that decision. They know that I go to meetings on Sunday mornings and on Monday nights and Tuesday nights. We haven't actually said what they are, but I'm not afraid to share that with them, because as tragic as my life was, it's the reason my life is beautiful as it is today. And I don't think that that's something that I don't think that you would want to keep from them, me personally.
Hey guys, I'm Delia. So I just want to say, like, thanks for sharing your stories tonight, because I didn't even know. My mom asked me to come along and I didn't know why I felt like I was supposed to go, but hearing your stories and just how much I resonate, like, we all have, excuse my French, we all have shit in our lives. We all go through things, and just seeing people for the humans and the realness is so refreshing. And I've been going through a really tough time lately, and it's just, this is exactly what I needed, to see everybody here, to hear you guys talking about how you've gotten through it. And I feel like mental health isn't linear. You've gone through your difficult times, but you're here now sharing and empowering other people. And I don't even know fully what I'm trying to say, but I wanted to say thank you, but also just just appreciate you guys and sharing your stories. And I think if you could give younger you a piece of advice, or like one thing that comes to mind the second I ask that question, like, what is it? What is that? I know that might be a big one, and you gave a whole talk.
Well, what I said earlier, that being normal is overrated, for sure. What you were saying reminded me, I mean, this is just how I think, but there's this great story. I relate everything to jazz, so. There's a great story when Herbie Hancock was asked about playing with Miles Davis, and he said he played a wrong note, and he was really freaked out. He didn't know what to do. But he said Miles bent his note on the trumpet to make his note on the piano be the right note. So to me, it's kind of like, what do you do when there's a bad note? Now, I used to freak out when I played a bad note. Now I play the note 2 times because everyone thinks you did it on purpose. There's just, it's what are you going to do with your bad note, That's it.
What would I tell my younger self? I would tell myself to work really hard to find people who were okay with me as my honest, authentic self. It's not easy to find people like that, and it's not easy to weed the people out. That's probably the hardest part, because you got to be honest with some people who are not going to be okay with it. And that's really, really hard. So if I had one piece of advice to give myself, is work on that early and work on it hard, because it's really important to have people in your corner that are okay with you and your authentic self, and okay with you when you're not okay.
I don't think that I would change anything about my path or my journey, because it got me to where I am, and I got here. So I think first and foremost, I would tell myself that I'm not alone, because I felt alone for so long. I don't think that would have changed my path. I don't think I would have done anything differently, even knowing that. But I think there would have been some comfort and not as much pain along the way. And then, another thing that, and it's whatever, we say it's apropos in the meetings, is don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle.
This just reminded me of what another motto I had in my head a lot during those hard times. Because I would usually, I'd be in ninth grade, I'd start to talk to a girl and say, I want to tell you this thing about me. And I'd say, look, it's a big thing. And she'd say, it's no big deal. And then this happened many times. I'd tell them and they break up with me the next day. So there's a quote from Marilyn Monroe. Everyone needs to keep in mind, if you can't take me at my best, at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best.
Joe, this is a question directly for you. I'm a musician. I play saxophone in a jazz band and clarinet in a concert band, and one comes right after the other. And I feel really different about how I play my saxophone versus how I play my clarinet. I don't worry about the wrong notes when I play the saxophone like I do on the clarinet. Do you think that your, I'll call it, gift helped you to become a better musician? Or do you play jazz music because of, your
Definitely. I mean, to me, jazz, I mean, let's get really philosophical here. What is jazz? I don't know. No one really knows. What it really is a person expressing who they are on a very deep level. So it's not, I want to be a jazz musician. It's, I want to be a Joe musician. And all of my heroes, all of my mentors have expressed the same thing. So yeah, if I was a classical musician, I don't know how this would have helped me. But in terms of jazz, which I think is a journey of self-discovery, yeah, it's 100% helped me figure out who I am. And that's why I think I can play music, because it's helped me figure out who I am. And I would not have been able to figure that out without OCD. I mean, maybe I would have years from now, or maybe I would have figured out I was a totally different person. I have no idea. But on terms of this person, yes, it's definitely helped.
Can you offer a suggestion as an alternative if you're unable to tell your story? Like, write it?
I don't think it's necessary to tell your story. I think you should get better whatever's helpful for you, honestly. I mean, to me, the only reason I'm telling my story is because I was so turned off to how other OCD stories were told. To me, if it's more important than telling my story was getting better, and also having an outlet to share your emotions. So I just just having some creative something. It doesn't have to have anything to do with telling your story. Just if you write or paint or anything, find something. I know people who go outside and throw the baseball is a way to get it out. I think that's more important than telling the story, personally.
Ditto, but also therapy. Oh yeah, that one.
I forgot to say therapy's not an option either.
Yeah, then I would do the same thing. I have a lot of creative outlets. I also play the piano, and it is where I find myself. I do painting and art, and it's incredibly therapeutic to make not to generalize disability, but to make a big black line somewhere and then try to make it all pretty. Or just leave it as it is and make a big blue line the other way and go, I'm done. It's fine, because that's what I have today, and that means something to you. Making things around you, creating something with what you are, what you have, what you've experienced in life, is a way to subtly put your story out there without saying what your story is in words. We don't always have to use English, and that's okay.
She said okay as many times as I've been arrested.
Humor's good.
Humor's good. Humor's good. Humor's good. So, two things I would say. I don't always share in a meeting. Sometimes I just don't want to. Sometimes I have something going on that's so personal or so uncomfortable that I don't want a bunch of people, no matter how well I know them or how close I am to them, to know. So I have a network. I have 3 people that I talk to on the regs. Whether it's, I have my friend Jordan, who I will be at home working, and I will call him and put him on speaker, and I will just absolutely dump on him. And he does the same for me. And like, that's therapeutic. I have kept a journal in the past, and I have a therapist, and another therapist, and recovery, and all the things. And one of the things that he suggested to me, I find it hard to find the time to like write paragraphs and like write a dissertation, even though it looks like I do because like whatever. But write questions. Ask yourself questions about how you feel, about what you think, and then come back to it and answer the question.
So interestingly enough, I thought what you said, Sarah, about finding the right people, and sometimes you share your story and then people will disappear on you. I've had that happen, but I correlate my struggles with mental health the same as I do with being Jewish and the anti-Semitism that we've experienced. Some people that I thought were my really, really close friends, and when I share, I suffer from major depressive disorder and severe anxiety, and when I share that with people, they act like it's contagious. And, I had a terrible accident in 2018, broke all sorts of bones. I had more help and more meals and more offers to help than I knew what to do with. And when I suffer from a major depressive episode, there's nobody around. And I don't blame people. People don't know what to say. And so I know who my true friends are and the people I could really count on and the people I could share with. And some of those people are sitting right next to me right now. And then I know the people that I just can't share that with. And the same way with the anti-Semitism, the people that I thought were really, really close friends were gone. And I'm like, wow, I asked them to come to certain meetings or certain things. And if they, weren't Jewish, and they were like, yeah, no, or they just ghosted me. And so I think that's just part of life, is you are constantly learning who you can trust, who your team is, and who you are good sharing with, and it could change. So that wasn't really a question. That was more of a hey.
Anyone else? Well, I would like to once again thank our speakers for sharing with us tonight. Thank you all so much, really. It is so wonderful and so powerful to hear all of your stories and to have you share them with us. Please stick around. Any of us will be here to answer any questions that you may otherwise want to ask privately or go into a little bit more detail on. We have some tables outside. Hamsa is represented there. Blue Dove and NAMI Georgia, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Please come up, check them out. There's also more food left enjoy it, and we are so happy to have you all here. Thank you.